We're good. All right. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you tonight. My roots in Brevard County professionally go way back about 36 and a half years. My claim to fame as a career bureaucrat has been the principal project leader for the district's Upper St. Johns River Restoration Project that we've constructed with the Army Corps of Engineers and multiple agencies in Indian River and Brevard County to restore about 150,000 acres of wetlands in the St. Johns headwaters. And at the the twilight of my career, I was asked, to my surprise, to lead the charge to transition the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program into a broader and more robust entity than what we've enjoyed for the past 24 years. I opted to forego the PowerPoint because death by PowerPoint is a painful way to spend the evening, and I know you probably have seen enough PowerPoints and heard people drone on and do the interminably poor thing of reading from the slides, and so I opted to just come and chat with you tonight and brief this commission and update you on the history of the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program and where we look to go as we look forward, the forward look in terms of the transition that's on the table and the transition that's underway currently. In 1990, the U.S. Congress passed a bill as part of the Clean Water Act update of that year and created what's called national estuary programs. And the goal of the Congress was to help infuse troubled estuaries with funding and help create partnerships, stronger partnerships between the federal, state, and local governments and key stakeholders, citizen stakeholders and interest groups, NGOs, the whole spectrum of folks that are interested in the health and welfare of estuaries, and create a program that would help galvanize that support, focus that support, organize it, and help do good things for the estuaries that are part of these programs. I believe the lagoon was either the third or the fourth NEP enrolled in 1991, and there are currently 28 national estuary programs nationwide. And they dot the map all the way around the coast to, from Maine all the way to California. Florida has 4 and Texas has 4. No other state comes close in terms of NEPs. We have the lagoon on the East Coast, and on the West Coast we have Tampa Bay, Sarasota Bay, and Charlotte Harbor. So 4 of our estuaries in Florida are enrolled in this national estuary program. Of course, funding is at the discretion of the Congress, and as with many programs that are born, if you've been around a long time and been privy to how government works and functions, you know that there are lots of promises and high hopes in the beginning of most major programs that are launched, and then as time goes on, the funding tends to trail a bit. The promised millions that were hoped for never materialized, but nevertheless, we've been able to do some good things with the NEP. There's one distinction I would like to make. The NEP is not all things lagoon. There are a lot of folks out there, a lot of organizations. There's scientific, academia, governments. You heard a speech or presentation last month, I believe, from Virginia Barker from Brevard County. I can promise you 20 years ago there wasn't a local government that would have someone that versed in the science of the Indian River. It just wouldn't have been there, certainly at the county, probably the county or the city level. But there's so much interest today in the waterway. There's so much interest in the lagoon. There's such a recognition of the problems that the lagoon faces that at almost all levels of government, folks are interested in doing something to help. The challenge as we go forward is probably going to be that we avoid tripping all over each other and loving the lagoon to death at the expense of the waterway. The challenge is that unless we harness the 20 mule team and hook them to the right wagon and pull in the same direction, we're all going to mean well, but we're not going to get the job done in terms of what needs to happen to help the lagoon. Now, the NEP has been sponsored by St. John's Water Management for 24 years. And we were asked to be the local sponsor along with our sister agency, South Florida, back when the NEP was born. Of course, the lagoon straddles both districts. About half of it is in the north, half in the south. I say half, although that's not half the surface area, because 72% of the surface area is here in Brevard County. Six counties straddle the lagoon east and west. I remind you, 5 miles of it drifts down into Palm Beach County, although Palm Beach is very insistent that they're not a lagoon county. But certainly Volusia, the south half of Volusia, all of Brevard, Indian River, St. Lucie, Martin counties are lagoon counties, and the lagoon stretches throughout, north-south throughout those counties. But through that partnership, it wasn't, as I recall, about a year or two into the partnership, South Florida was getting saddled, of course, with the Everglades cleanup and all the issues attendant to the glades, and they asked St. John's if we would just simply run the program. And it really made sense that we didn't have two agencies trying to boss the same program. Most of the lagoon was in our district anyway. We had the office here in Palm Bay that operated the NEP, and South Florida simply asked if we would do it, and we agreed to do that. All that the counties in the south get from us are the tag money. As you know, the Indian River Lagoon has a license tag, a specialty tag, which, and I just want to credit to the efforts of Harry and Linda Good on that. Harry was in the House when the tag was passed, and Linda she was really the sole champion. She was an independent champion out there that promoted that tag and wouldn't let anybody tell her no. And consequently, the sale of that tag is off the charts compared to other specialty tags that are similar to the lagoon. Folks scratch their head even today that they, like the St. John's River Alliance had a tag created, and they looked over in our cat bowl, the lagoon bowl, and they said, "Look how much money you all have gotten. We can get the same." And I warned them. I said, "Guys, ain't gonna happen. You don't have a Linda. You don't have a champion." But that tag money helps. I mean, it helps, and it can't be spent on admin. It can't be spent on salaries or bureaucracy. It has to be put in the projects. And it's a portion based on sales, and it goes directly to projects within the counties where those tags are sold. But taking a step back, I want to emphasize to this commission that the ERLNEP, we call it, Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program, ERLNEP, is just a small piece of the lagoon pie. It's an important piece because it's so visible. It has congressional backing. The congressmen love it, the politicians love it. It's funded by the Congress, it's endorsed by the Congress, it's enrolled in a national program. That comes with strings, but it also comes with a lot of benefits. But it's only part of our own overall effort. Predating the NEP was the SWIM Act, the Surface Water Improvement and Management Act of 1987, which was a piece of landmark legislation passed by the Florida House and Senate that ordered the water districts to address the problem of Florida's most polluted surface waters. And as part of that act, the lagoon was named in the original bill. And so St. John's and South Florida have statutory responsibility for developing and implementing a significant program that's guided by science, that's driven by scientific research, sound science, and the goal is to have that science translated into applied research where projects are built based on what the science tells us needs to be done. So you have this SWIM program that's the water management districts, South Florida, St. John's, have spent millions and millions of dollars over the years to do the investigations. Gosh, I can't begin to rattle off the number of acres of mosquito impoundment reconnections that have been done, the stormwater retrofits, the baffle boxes that have been installed, innumerable number of community events that have tried to increase awareness, citizen awareness of behaviors that are positive for the lagoon versus those that are not, stenciling storm drains. I mean, down to having local fairs and passing out brochures to the interested citizenry on the one hand, and doing multi-million-dollar high-tech dredging projects to remove muck, such as the one that we just celebrated the beginning of at Algali River just a few weeks ago, a $10 million legislative appropriation to dredge muck in the Algali River system. So you have this SWIM program, and as part of that, you have the NEP, and that program is funded by Congress at the tune of about $538,000 a year. All NEPs get $538,000. A few get more. San Francisco Bay gets $25 million a year. Who's the senator from San Francisco? So I mean, you know, that's going to happen. You're going to have politicians that are able to you know, get extra appropriations, and there are a few NEPs. I think there's like 3 or 4 that get nothing like $25 million. There's especially special projects that they're doing for 25, but there are a few that get $3 or $4 more million a year. But most of them live on $538,000. That funds the NEP, and believe me, folks, that doesn't go very far. Okay, most NEPs run their office and turn their lights on and run the air conditioning and hire a minimal staff of a director and an outreach person and a scientist for about that amount of money. And that's it. But they're a coordinative function. They perform a coordination function for the waterway that they serve. What has given the Indian River National Estuary a tremendous advantage is that St. John's has underwritten 100% of all the staff salaries and overhead for 23 of the 24 years. So for 23 of 24 years, we funded 100% of the people and 100% of the overhead. So it freed up all of the federal money to be matched locally to go into projects. Now, I mean, you can call that a gift. I would. I mean, I think our board, our governing board, simply decided it was important to free up that money to go into projects, and they opted to fund that. And so we just simply paid for the staff as part of our personnel package. We didn't we didn't pay for our staff salaries for the NEP out of the federal money. We paid for it out of our ad valorem staffing salaries. And that's important because it leveraged all of the federal funds to be matched. So essentially you had a little, let's call it in round numbers, about $1 million a year. Some years a little more, some years a little less, but about $1 million a year has gone into projects in the ground to help the lagoon. And I say in the ground, that also includes a small share of outreach projects, educational type projects to educate the community. And that's a requirement of the NEP programs. That's Congress dictated that you have to spend a small share of your effort on public education and outreach, as well as just shovel-ready type projects. So combined with the SWIM program, special legislative appropriations, there's this roughly $1 million a year that's gone into lagoon projects to be done. And that's, again, matched, 50% of the Fed money matched by locals, cities, counties, some NGOs, but mostly governments that propose projects each year and say, here's a project we want to do to benefit the lagoon. They propose the project, it's ranked, it's vetted out through the NEP Management Committee, the citizen committees, technical advisory committee, and the folks that serve on a volunteer basis for the NEP, and they're recommended to the full NEP advisory board, who approves the list of projects, and they're usually around 12 to 15 projects a year that are funded, and then that's blessed by the St. John's board, and it goes out every year for contracts, and the contracts are let and work gets done, and the next year we go through that same cycle. Okay. Whew. Any questions on the history? Good. So going forward, I was called into my big boss's office, and I didn't know, frankly, whether I was going to get a pat on the head or a paddle to my butt. I didn't know if I was in trouble, or I was serving as the ombudsman at the time for St. John's, and I thought, well, perhaps there's been a permitting issue that somebody got crosswise on and they're not happy, and maybe this is the executive director's friend or something, and he wants to sensitize me, or maybe I didn't handle something. I didn't know. I didn't have a clue. And when I got up there, he said, I need a favor. And, you know, you should have learned after 36 years not to say yes before you hear the question. But he asked me to lead a transition effort to shift the lagoon program from a sole sponsor unto multiple sponsorings. And the purpose of that effort is to but afford the NEP the opportunity to be what it could be, but it hasn't been. And it can't be, frankly, as long as a water management district is the leader, because the sole leader, because by its own definition, NEPs are non-regulatory programs. Congress prohibited use of regulatory as a tool to implement programs through the National Estuary programs. It's supposed to be a friendly program, a carrot program, not a stick. Well, what's St. John's known as? A big stick. I mean, we're a regulatory program. We do other projects. I've worked my whole career building a flood control and river restoration project in the headwaters of St. John's. I've never worked a day of my life in regulatory. But that's not how the public see us. And to the public, we're a regulator. And it's just, it's ironic in a way. I mean, we're a regulatory agency running a non-regulatory program. And it's come with its challenges. And so in looking at the environment, looking at the problems that exist in the lagoon today, we know there's not, you all are a bunch of smart folks in this room, and you know, any sentient human that knows anything about the complexities of the problems in this lagoon know that $1 million a year is not going to fix it. $500,000 a year ain't going to fix it. $10 million a year is not going to fix it. It's going to take a huge undertaking and a multi-pronged approach all at the same time. You talk about the surge. I mean, I don't know much about military strategy, but I hear about the surge, you know, where you kind of push in with your force. And you heard it from Virginia Barker. It's in your notes on page 2. And she's right. Reduce pollutant and nutrient inputs, remove detrimental muck, restore oysters, clams, and wetlands. And she said all those need to be done at the same time. Well, she's right. She's right. And as much as we celebrate, thank you, Florida legislature, for the gift of $10 million. Thank you for the gift of money to do muck dredging. We're standing here looking at the need for a multi-billion dollar effort over the next several years to correct the problems in this lagoon. Does every bit help? You bet. Sure. Sure, the $1 million a year doesn't hurt. Putting the baffle box at the end of the road to catch the sediment, and yeah, it helps. Okay, it's better than nothing, but it's not going to fix the problem. And so as we looked at the landscape and looked at the problems, we said we're just not going to get there from here if we don't do something different. If we don't think outside the box and do something radically different. What's the definition of insanity? You know, doing the same thing next year and expecting you're going to get a different result. And we said, what can we do differently to make the lagoon better? And we came up with this answer that we thought we should offer opportunity to broaden the sponsorship base, bring more sustained funding to the table, enlist the support of our elected officials, who are eager, by the way, to help. I mean, you don't talk to any elected official at the state level up and down the lagoon, or even the local level, they aren't sensitized to this lagoon issue. You have the incoming speaker, Senator Pruitt, I'm sorry, not Pruitt, Negron at the south end. The lagoon is in their basin. The speaker designate has indicated that water is going to be high on his agenda. So the political stars are aligned in a unique way that happens once in a lifetime, where you have the leader of your Senate, your House leader of your Senate in the same water basin, who are passionate about the lagoon. The problem with the super bloom has radically sensitized people in a new dimension that weren't before. And, you know, as I read the summation in your notes in your meeting minutes, and I think they're fairly accurate. But before the bloom, I remind you, all the indicators were trending pretty upward. I mean, no, the lagoon wasn't totally healthy, but the seagrasses were doing better. Everything was trending better. And then the super bloom and collapse of the seagrasses, and that, it takes a crisis to galvanize folks. And let's face it, it just does. And that was the crisis that pulled the pin out of the grenade and caused all kind of screaming about what can we do? We have to do something. We can't keep on like this. And so what we have on the table, we've gone to the Lagoon Board, the advisory board of the Indian River Lagoon program, and suggested a different governance structure where the DEP and the two water districts will step up and become paying partner members on a sustained basis. The 5 counties that straddle the lagoon, Volusia, Brevard, Indian River, St. Lucie, and Martin counties would join as partners and bring some funding to the table, again on a sustained basis, and create a new lagoon sponsoring organization that will sponsor the NEP. Congress requires you to have a local sponsor to work with the NEP program. So EPA is a non-voting member on the board. DEP, the two water managements, would be the state representatives, 5 counties, and currently it's in flux whether or not how much larger that board may be. Some are suggesting 11 members. There's a question about municipal participation at some level. And the challenge we looked at when we looked at the map was, what do you do? The lagoon has 190 some governments up and down its 156-mile length. Tampa Bay was lucky. They only had 3 cities and 3 counties, and they captured everybody. And would you believe, I just found this fact that it's something you can tell at your next cocktail party and impress your friends. Do you know within a few square miles, Tampa Bay and the Indian River Lagoon are the same surface size? It's incredible. I didn't know that. But it is. It's the same surface size. I was shocked. But anyway, Tampa's like a perfectly round bay, and it has, the cities. Anyway, they captured everybody and got 3 cities and got virtually everybody that borders the Tampa Bay. How do you do it? So we made a proposal to perhaps the League of Cities. I said perhaps, we aren't sure yet, but if the leagues of cities for Volusia and Space Coast and Treasure Coast offered a member, they could have representation from the south, the north, and the middle perhaps. But again, that's to be determined. The point is, there seems to be steam, there seems to be support for changing the governance, for broadening the sponsorship base from St. John's alone to a partnership of state and county organizations to create a new entity, a new special entity that then would become the sponsoring, legal sponsoring entity for the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. And they would be free of some of the encumbrances that St. John's has because of our unique relationship and governance requirements. They would be able, for instance, to accept public monies, donated monies. They would be able to solicit private donations from corporations. Be surprised how many people would like to contribute and would contribute to the lagoon cause. But we aren't. St. John's is not allowed to accept those kinds of donations. So it would give this new sponsor a lot of freedoms that we don't have currently. It would allow a singular focus on one waterway and one set of problems. To us, to St. John's, the lagoon is one of several things we have to say grace over. We have 9 swim water bodies in our district, in our 18 counties. 9 swim water bodies. And You know, believe me, folks in Gainesville think their lake is just as important as you think your lagoon is. and you know, so our board is always torn at, you know, how do you divide the baby? You know, every year, how do you budget? Where do you put your limited resources to meet the needs? And of course, there are priorities. Everything isn't ranked the same, and so you end up having to give attention to certain things at the expense of others. We have a lot to say grace over. The lagoon is one of many projects for us. So with the NEP, with a stronger NEP and a stronger, that can focus singularly on the issues of the lagoon and leverage the help that's available out there, and frankly, drum up the help that's out there. And that, to me, is probably, in closing, the favorite two words in any speech. In closing, that's the real strength of what the new entity can do. It can galvanize public support for the lagoon cleanup and all the things that need to be done in a way that I think will benefit the waterway in a much better way than we can do it alone. So, you know, facilitation, coordination, collaboration, those are the type of terms that the NEP is for. That's what the NEP is designed to do. Bring together parties that are concerned about the issues related to a troubled waterway and bring the attention that it needs, become a leader in effect, become a singular leader for all things lagoon. And a repository of, they won't do, I doubt the NEP will do bulldoze work. They won't do dredge work. That would be foolish. But what they can do is bring the parties together that are capable to do that work, cut through the bureaucracy, help bring the political will together, and then bring the right agencies together to partner to do it. That's how Tampa Bay and Sarasota have been successful across the state. They don't want to get in the dredging business. They're a small entity. You don't want to do that. Dredging muck is a high liability project, believe me. If anything can go wrong, it will. But what they do, and if there's a muck project to do, they give it to the Southwest Florida Water District, or they give it to an entity like the Corps of Engineers to do it for them. And so that's kind of how we see this thing working as we go forward. It has to go to a vote. We're still massaging the language of a new interlocal agreement with the entities that I named. And once we flesh that out, it will go to a vote of the Lagoon Board, and then it'll go to the vote of all those entities. The water boards have already, the South Florida and St. John's have already voted approval. And we each, I believe, each, the two boards, St. John's and South Florida, agreed to give $500,000 a year. That'll be $500 from the feds, $500 from the two districts. So already the program has gone from a $500,000 program to a $1.5 million program. If the counties each put in $50,000, this is what's on the table, $50,000 each, that'll bump it up another $250,000. So what can we do with that money? We can leverage that then into 4 or 5 times the projects that we're doing currently at about $1 million a year. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, but that's sort of what's on the table and what's in the cards as we look at going forward.
Dean Pettit. I remember some time back, some of the programs you involved include redirecting the flow of the Melbourne-Tillman Canal
Yes.
system,
Yes.
as well as the C-54 canal system.
Yes.
And the C-54 canal has been redirected into the Fellsmere, Stickmarsh, Farm 13 area.
Well, actually, there's no flow in C-54 redirected, but what happened is the construction of the Upper St. John's project eliminated 80% in frequency and volume of stormwater discharges in C-54. When the Fellsmere addition was added, another 10,000 acres, that stopped all discharges. We have enough storage now in the upper basin that we will not have to make flood flow releases from C-54 again. All right. C1, we did physically divert to the west, and we lift that water by pumps into primary and secondary and tertiary treatment reservoirs before that water is discharged to the St. John's.
That's the
Melbourne-Tillman, C1, right. So about half of the 99 square mile Melbourne-Tillman basin that used to all flow to the lagoon, about half of that basin now has been diverted back to the west, which is essentially its historical receiving basin, because everything west of the I-95 ridge used to flow to the St. John's anyway.
Right, so you
Right.
basically restored.
We've restored the drainage divide.
But now the stick marsh and Farm 13 areas, those are actually flooded woodlands or?
They're flooded farmlands, 2,000 acres of what was the stick marsh. The 6,000 acre reservoir, 2,000 acres was the stick marsh. And the other was Farm 13 that was owned by Fellsmere Farms, and that was in radishes and carrots. So there was significant subsidence of the muck soil there, and that 6,200 acre reservoir was built on 6,000 acres of farmland and 2,000 acres of stick marsh. And it's flooded and has been since 1986. And like I said, it along with the other reservoirs that are part of the core project reduced 80% of the flow to C54, and Fellsmere eliminated the other 20. So once Fellsmere Water Management District comes on, water management area comes online, the additional 10,000 acres that we purchased from Fellsmere, then flow to C54 project flows will be reduced to zero.
And I have one other question about your impoundment reconnection program. At a meeting at St. John's River Water Management District years ago, when it was on Marguerite Angle, when I first got on this commission, and they had a presentation down at the Holiday Inn, I think, in Indian Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
The next day was a boat tour.
Right.
And they had mentioned in the when they started to reconnect, they had all these mosquito impoundments that were separated from the main lagoon body. They realized they were getting into hypersalinity, or
Right.
I mean, it was just messing things up, and they started reconnecting them. And they actually placed fish traps in these culverts to see whether fish
Right.
would use
them, right.
And the catches of snook were phenomenal.
Yeah.
Little juvenile snook.
You're right.
How well is that? Are your target reconnections, are they done to this point, or is this still work ongoing?
It's largely complete in North Brevard County. We had a super partner with Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge. It was, perfect. I mean, our goals were just so symbiotic. It was an easy fix. So most of the connections up here are pretty much finished. I can get you the numbers on it and where the remaining impoundments are that we'd like to connect. I know we have GIS mapping on that, but I just don't recall off the top of my head what the acreages are.
Yeah, but you also have further projects in the south.
We do.
Near Sebastian.
We do. Sebastian area, yes. Yes.
And has there been an impact, a noticeable impact on the fisheries?
I don't know. I can find out for you. I don't know. I've heard it's good. I mean, I heard that it's been a positive on fishery, but I don't know what the numbers are.
Yeah, okay, if you find a spot on the program's website that has that information.
Sure.
You can just forward it
Sure.
to the city, and then
Sure.
I'll get a copy of it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
First question, would the NEP agency, would the governance of it be determined by contributing and participating members, or would the governance of it be decided outside of that?
Good question. And I should have hammered this home. One of the benefits of the changes, I think, to anybody but me, St. John's, my agency, is that St. John's board will no longer be the deciding entity. The new lagoon board will vote, and they will be the final jurisdictional authority over how the funds are spent on the NEP. So that board, comprised of the state and the 5 counties, they would be the final vote.
Okay, and like a part B of that question, would the requirements of participation be based on area? In other words, could Brevard, constituting 70% of the surface area of the ILL, be responsible to contribute 70%?
We didn't try to, at this stage, okay, the team I'm working with cobbled together an agreement. We didn't opt to try to tease it out at that level and say, oh, you got 70% of the water, you ought to pay 70% of it. We're just saying if you're a county and you want to participate and be on the board, frankly, we just borrowed the number that Sarasota and Tampa are using. The counties over there are pitching in 50,000. We thought, okay, if it works over there, how about 50,000? You know, it's not the money as much as it is skin in the game, a partner that pays, that steps up with some funding, and so those are just the numbers that are being discussed today. There's nothing magic about them. We certainly would anticipate that the state and the 2 water districts would pay a lot more. They do in the other NEPs. Southwest pays, I think, $133,000 a year. The counties over there at Tampa Bay pay about 50. Their cities pay 30, and their towns pay 15. That's the arrangement.
On the other direction, with everything going back to all the way up from the Stick Marsh, being redirected back into the St. John's Basin, some of these things that you've stated are based on historic numbers. So restoring it to historic flow and patterns, but the present day experience is different than the historical baseline.
Sure.
There's a lot of drawdown in the Wekiva, the Yukon. Can the St. John's bear water that was never born from that ridge? In other words, from the eastern side, if we were to move in directions to say, is it better for us to take storm water that's harvested and by flow in our ditch, our irrigation and runoff ditches, and redirect it even further west than the 95 ridge with lift pumps? I mean, we can at least look at dollar values on what it costs to use lift pumps to move water in a natural direction.
Sure. Well, the short answer, Mark, is, you know, anything can be engineered.
Because of drawdown.
Well, we would simply have to make sure that any additional flows don't trip the design flood stage requirements. You know, as long as we can accommodate the water without exceeding the flood stage regulations, then we're good to go. The St. John's has enormous capacity, and whether you create the storage perhaps in alternate stormwater reservoirs, that could be an alternative to remove more water. But you're right, the lagoon, the drainage area of the lagoon basin has increased by 3 times over its historic boundaries because of artificial drainage improvements. You know, ditching and canals that were dug across the ridge have. So it's probably a much more fresh water system than it ever was before. And with the
restored back to primary saline basin with some
right, and I wouldn't say that is necessarily the goal as we sit today. It's probably very ambitious to think in those terms right now, when we've got but you're right. I mean, I hear where you're going. But is this the time to do it? Is this the time to look at those types of alternatives? And that's something that I hope this new lagoon body will start to do. I mean, we got to think outside the box. We're going to have to. I know one gentleman came to our last meeting and commented, I didn't recall who it was, I don't know that I've ever seen him, but he commented that he thought we weren't thinking big enough. I think that was the gist of his term. And unfortunately, he left before anybody could say anything. But this is an opportunity to do just that, to think bigger than just, you know, the Dutch boy with running out of fingers and the dam still leaking. So I think everything's on the table. And, you know, get while the getting's good. And as long as there's even a perceived crisis out there, that's the time to galvanize the will of the public and the will of the elected officials and those who can and do control the purse strings. Because, you know, let's face it, without resources, the best plans, you can't implement the plans. The lagoon plan, the blueprint for the lagoon restoration is called the CCMP, Comprehensive, whatever it's called, plan. It's a comprehensive plan. And I got to tell you, in my 36-year career, I mean, no plan has ever been better vetted or reviewed by more academics and the inputs from the scientists, from districts, from academia, from FIT, you know, Harbor Branch, you name it. This is one of the finest documents that quantify the problem, identify the problem, and identify specific remedies, specific solutions to those problems. There's no problem with the plan. The problem has been not enough money to implement enough of the plan to make the difference.
One last question. Over your 36 years, have you had to work with or support a mechanically rediverted water project that of any significant distance? And what would that look like?
Well, you mean in terms of diverting water?
Using up
Pumps? Oh yeah, sure. Sure.
The structural
Oh, sure.
requirements to move water over
Yeah, sure.
distance.
Yeah, the lake
Significance.
of Popka Flowway is probably the best example, where we look to pump water out of the lake and circulate it through an artificially created liquid kidney, treat that water and discharge it back into the lake. And you know, it was a circuitous route of several miles to do that.
What did that project cost?
Lake of Popka, well, as you may recall, Mark, the farmers approached their legislators for a buyout, and rather than be regulated, they opted to sell their holdings. So, you know, that was what, $200 million in land sales. So the project probably would have cost about $50 million without the buyout, but we didn't have to complete the flowway because the farmers opted for the alternative of selling the property. Yes, sir.
I'm wondering how the NEP is going to be working with, like, the Florida Environmental Protection, Brian Sharp's group on the aquatic. They have a management plan, but their plan seems to start about south of the bar and go south.
Yes.
And I'm thinking that north, the bar part of the IRL is also
Sure.
important. And I didn't know how you all are interfacing with that.
I know our scientists talk all the time. The scientific community up and down the lagoon is a pretty tight group, and they're a very collaborative group. Several of them serve on the lagoon board. Scientists from Harbor Branch, FIT, Florida Atlantic, well, that's Harbor Branch. District scientists, you know, so I know that DEP serves on that panel as well, and I don't know, I can't speak personally to how the relationship is relative to the preserve plans, but that's something certainly DEP will need to coordinate, because, you know, they're in charge of that just as well as they are. Will have a seat on the lagoon board.
Oh, and also in the past, I've worked a lot with Cory Rice,
Mm-hmm.
oyster projects and stuff, and also some of the people at St. John's up in Volusia County on shoreline restoration on lagoons.
Right.
Any sort of things like that that come up you need volunteers for? I'd love to see
great.
And I just want to say Troy Rice is great. I've seen
Yep.
him do a lot of work.
Yes, thank you. I'll pass on your comments. Troy worked for me for 13 years, and I thought he was a great guy too, and did a great job for the lagoon. And we appreciate his service, and I'll be sure he knows he's still being complimented out there. Yes, sir.
Michael Myjack here. I've got a two-part question, and I'm not sure how best to approach it. Given what Virginia talked about, both to us and to the American Assembly last June, and as you stated too, the scale of the problem is in the billions, tens of billions of dollars, which is, quite frankly, orders of magnitude 2 or more larger than I think any of us here have estimated in the past. I mean, we knew it was big. We figured 100 million big. We didn't figure 10 billion big. But I think I agree with you that that's where we're at after hearing Virginia talking about these impoundments also producing
Right.
polluted waters into our lagoon, even when it's not raining. I mean,
Right.
the ground is already damaged, and
Right.
using it to hold more water isn't helping. So why don't we just go the full Monty and go with the National Maritime Preserve Program and have it run under NOAA as a complete conglomerate? Because as you say, it's a multi-county, multifaceted, multi-governmental, and getting one side to agree with the other. Like you said, the lake up in Jacksonville being any more or less important than our lagoon. If we stick it in under the control of the National Preserve, like they did with the Dry Tortuga, to me, taking that from called the Indian River Lagoon National Maritime Preserve, take it from the shores, the eastern bank of the lagoon, all the way out to Oculina Bank, for example, where we've got rare and indigenous deep water corals and stuff that need to be that are protected,
Right.
a little strip protected as well. We stand, I would think, a better chance of recovery from that kind of level of protection. And all it takes is for everyone, a majority, simple majority, to vote and agree. So is this something that your lagoon board and the governance bodies that you're pulling together could vote on and bring forward because that's going to bring more money and more oversight from the government to protect this multi-billion-dollar
Right.
endeavor.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
I would say that, yes, the answer is they could vote on it, but it's the first I've heard of that type of proposal. It's very interesting, intriguing to me. But yes, first I've heard of that type of possible partnership.
Well, you're familiar with Jim Egan?
Yes.
As a former.
Yes.
Jim had the NOAA Southeast Region Director come down to the Marine Resources Council and discuss what was going on in Keys and about creating just such a program here. But I think at the time, with building booming and the bubble having not burst yet, nor we've had bellwethers. You said we didn't have any, but we have. We've lost.
Yeah.
We've lost the clam population.
Yeah.
We've lost the filter feeders generally in the 90s, and that's a bellwether marker
Right.
of some significance. And so to simply say it was just the bloom here of 11 and 12.
No, it has. It's more than that.
Of course it is.
It is more than
and
that.
as we found from Virginia, the effluent going in from our normal groundwater is contributing, and all of that needs to be addressed at one time. We haven't had the public support, I think, at that time.
Right.
But I think we do now, and I think if that were to be raised to that national level, I think we would get buy-in from all the stakeholders, from the voters and
Right.
fishermen and everybody. And yeah, it's going to take some, control from some groups that want to continue to drive their boats over manatees and things like that. But you get what I'm saying. I think
I do.
that's an approach that we should seriously look at for additional federal money.
That's very intriguing. What was your second part?
Well, that was it.
Oh, that was it. Okay.
They
All right.
sound like one.
All right.
It comes down to it sometimes.
All right.
I do have one more question.
Yes, Mr. Pettit.
Real quick. It sounds like there's a great organization there that's poised to do a lot of good. What can we as a city do? How well is Titusville cooperating with it or working with this program? And what more can we do?
Well, I appreciate the question. And I would urge, I think that a positive start is for the city to, perhaps through your august recommendation, to raise their hand and say, hey, we want to be a part of this organization. We want to be a part of it in some way. Now, I talked about the board and the funding, but as part of NEP structures, NEP kind of gives you the prescription. When you buy an NEP, you get the model that they kind of give you. And part of that model is not only a governing board, but they also have what's called a management committee. And the management committee is made up of myriad of partners, interested cities, counties, people, interested stakeholders, marine resource councils, FITs, all these types of folk. And under the management board are the technical advisory committee and the citizen action committee. The citizen focus on the outreach and education, public involvement. The technicals are the Dr. Yost? Jan. Dr. Jans. They're the folks, they're the heavy lifters in terms of their technical prowess, and they're the ones that vet the projects. They're the ones that say grace over these numbers of proposals that come in and say, okay, this one's harebrained. No, don't waste your money on that. Or, yeah, this is a good program. We need to focus on this. Because ultimately, these are lay people. They're elected county officials. I mean, they don't know. They have to have the scientists to tell them, what's good, what's not, what's serious, and what's a waste of time. But I think, and I would encourage all the cities that are interested up and down the lagoon, which I would think all of them would be, to come and let your voice be heard. Say we want to be a part of this in some way. We want to help make the NEP as strong as it can be, and become the program that it could have been and never quite made it. I think Commissioner Chuck Nelson from Brevard, if I understand, he's term limited out this season, and he served very faithfully on the Lagoon Board, and I think he said it pretty well. He just felt like, great program, had a lot of potential, but it just lacked generalship. It lacked a singular leader out there. It never became that leading organization that it could have been. And looking at it, hindsight's 20/20, and I think part of that, frankly, is just the district doing the best we could, but we can't be the sole leader of this and make it work.
Well, one of the reasons I was asking is, one of the items on our agenda tonight is, should we host some kind of a lagoon forum? But hearing you speak and hearing Virginia speak last week, I'm thinking there's already bigger fish than us doing this.
Yeah.
And instead of trying to duplicate anything like that, maybe we should make sure that we are providing the support you need, and keeping the lines of communications open so that we're on the same page with you.
Sure.
I mean, I think it would be the idea of creating having the city create a position, somebody that coordinates what things are, something like that.
Interesting. You're with MRC, right? No, but you know of MRC. Yeah. They did a American Assemblies recently, I think. They did a lagoon-wide forum a few months ago, and used to do that, I think, every year or every 2 years. And it brought out all the lagoonies. I mean, from gee, I got somebody laughed at a joke. But no, I mean they had quite a few folk come out and talk about the issues, and so I mean, but that's the kind of thing that I think would help, and what just you said, something like that's pragmatic, but rather than even creating a position. As long as the city is participating, they're staffers. They have the right staffers that can help.
Has the city of Titusville been participating?
They attend faithfully. Mm-hmm.
They had 10 scientists and 90 political yahoos. I mean, that was the
Yeah.
American Assembly.
Yeah.
And how are we going to go from 1.75 million annually to
Big,
100 times that?
well, big thinking. It's going to take big thinking and big asking, and the issue just isn't local. I mean, we've got the Okeechobee discharges are a massive issue. The St. Lucie discharges from Okeechobee are a big problem that has to be addressed. But it's just going to take you know, the way we get stuff done in our society is we yoke our strength and we make noise, and if it's a serious issue, and this is not a, it's yelling until somebody says okay. What do you need? And the politicos are asking that question today. So we need to tell them what do we need. Yes, sir, Mark.
I've heard a couple of things here tonight. You know, we agree to disagree peaceably. That what for me could be perceived as pragmatism with a heavy helping of side of caution could also be seen as a continuous dirge of picking the low-hanging fruit. Yes, we're constrained by financial restrictions. What's the easiest thing for us to do with the most impact? But this approach is we haven't made progress. It's just slowing down the degradation, the erosion of our quality of ecology here. And it's discerning for me. It really is. I understand we need a lot of money and new approaches, and a body that will disseminate between the things that are just really, that's a harebrained idea, to that's a great idea, it would work great, but we'll never have that much money. But it seems that the continual, over and over again, solution strategy is to go for the low-hanging fruit. And for me, I'm looking forward to a day where we set a high target and then do the revenue generation to make that happen. Okay. This is the best thing we can do, and come to that conclusion. And these community forums are, for me, I think it's a great way to disseminate information, to the accurate information to the concerned interests in our community. Sure. We come from a very highly capable technical community, and who's to say we might show up and say something we haven't heard yet? You know, I think would be something that we're capable of doing is conducting a community forum, and the possibility of hearing something we haven't heard already. You know, we all know that
you never know.
Shoreline-based inlets aren't going to have the solution we're looking for. But what if we hear the solution that we haven't heard before? So, you know, once again, to agree to disagree peaceably, I would say that you know, having a community forum might be an idea that we should at least discuss. But on the other end of it, I've got to know that if we're going to support a singular entity, that this pattern of behavior that I've seen over the last 35 years I've been here, of going for the low-hanging fruit is going to change, that we're going to set real targets for real solutions.
Well, I have the sense that this is the day, if ever there was a chance to do that. After all, we got 5 county commissions lining up for this. That's unprecedented alone. Now, it hasn't been passed by all 5 yet. Okay, I'm holding my fingers, but we're working. I mean, they're being cooperative, and it's looking good. First of the year, we hope. Early next year is probably reasonable. We have to get this through 5 county boards yet. And I'll just leave you with this comment, Mark, and I hear you about the, you know, the new technologies out there. I was, shortly after I accepted this appointment, I mean, I just barely, well, Troy worked for me for 30, so I oversaw Troy, but Troy didn't need a boss. I mean, you know, Troy knew what he was doing. But I knew something about the lagoon, but I didn't know all the particulars, you know. And I interviewed here on a Florida Today television show about 3 days later, and of course, you know, there's always that gotcha question. You know, isn't it true the lagoon is just so far trashed? I mean, no matter what you do, you'll never get it back. I mean, isn't it really just too late? You know, how do you answer that? Well, here's what I told the guy. I said, you know, that question reminds me of the story of the great New York manure scare of 1890 something, whatever it was. When some brilliant engineer calculated that at the rate of manure deposition from all the horses pulling carts of goods and services into town, that New York City within 25 years would be buried under manure and would be uninhabitable. But he just missed one thing, the invention of the car. You know? So, you know, you're right. You got NASA right here, brilliant people. Who knows? Somebody out there is going to come up with something that works. And, you know, it's already being tested. Nutrient removal for a host of newfangled approaches is being explored even as we speak. We have a paper for performance project at Lake Jessup, 18th largest polluted lake in Florida. Not 18th polluted, it's 18th largest, but it's the most polluted. It's essentially the retention pond for Seminole County. And there's an outfit doing a nutrient removal project that's very high tech out there. So, you know, folks are going to figure this out. I don't think it's hopeless. I don't think it's hopeless at all. I don't think any of us can afford to take that view. It's challenging, though, and if this were simple, everybody would be doing it. And I want to thank you and Godspeed to every one of you for your service on this commission and for caring about our environment and what it means to our future generations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.